It's 5:58 a.m. in a quiet newsroom tucked beneath the skyline of a city that never sleeps. The hum of fluorescent lights blends with the distant buzz of early traffic. A lone producer adjusts camera angles, unaware that history is about to unfold on live television. Outside, dawn breaks like any other day, but inside, something feels off. The air is thick with routine, tension simmering just beneath the surface. At exactly 6 a.m., a figure steps into frame. An invited, unannounced stand changes everything. What happens next will shake the foundations of power and leave the world watching, breathless. The White House press room hums with the familiar rhythm of political theater. Cameras roll. Reporters murmur into microphones. Aides shuffle papers behind the podium, adjusting angles, checking sound levels. Routine. Predictable. Then she steps forward, uninvited. Unannounced. Congresswoman Jasmine Crockett cuts through the choreographed order like a live wire. She doesn't ask permission. She doesn't wait her turn. She walks straight to the mic center. Stage and adjusts it with calm precision. The room stirs. Reporters glance sideways. A producer mouths something into a headset. Someone whispers, "This isn't scheduled," but the cameras are still rolling. And so is she. Her voice uninvited. She speaks. Not loudly, not dramatically. Just clearly. Her voice carries across the room like a blade slicing through fog. Double quotes. "Mr. President, you've said repeatedly that this administration has no ties to foreign interference in our intelligence operations. But we now have evidence, verified cross-reference that contradicts that claim." Silence falls. A reporter exhales sharply. A cameraman adjusts his lens. A White House aide takes a step back, as if trying to disappear. Crockett continues. "We have documentation showing classified directives issued without congressional oversight. We have records of meetings held in undisclosed locations. And we have names tied directly to your inner circle." The air thickens. No one moves. Not yet. The president snaps. He turns toward her. His jaw tightens. His eyes narrow. Then he interrupts. "This is reckless. Dangerous. You're playing with national security." His voice cracks, not with emotion, but with control slipping. "You don't understand what's at stake. You're not qualified to make these accusations." Crockett doesn't flinch. "I'm quoting from documents signed by your own hand. Are you saying they're fake?" He doesn't answer. Instead, he raises his voice. "This is an attack. An orchestrated smear campaign. I will not stand here and be ambushed by radical elements masquerading as public servants." The room is frozen, but the world is watching. Cameras capture everything. A reporter drops a glass of water. It shatters. The sound echoes like gunfire. A phone slips from someone's hand. It hits the floor. Still recording. One camera zooms in tight on the president's face. His temples pulse. His fingers grip the podium. Another pans wide to show Crockett standing firm, shoulders squared, gaze unwavering. No script, no editing. Just raw history. Unfolding. In real time. The world stops and watches. Breaking news banners flash across global networks. Breaking: U.S. President confronted live on air over classified leak. Social media explodes. Hashtags trend within minutes. #truth or treason. #live from DC. #Crockett exposed. Clips circulate. Commentary erupts. Screens freeze frame on the moment the president turned red-faced, his composure cracking under pressure. In Moscow, state-run television replays the footage with glee. In Beijing, analysts dissect the implications for American credibility. In London, Parliament debates whether to delay a pending trade agreement. In Nairobi, Lagos, snow polo activists watch and share. In classrooms across America, students replay the moment. A woman stood up and spoke truth to power. And in every corner of the world, people asked the same question: what just happened? Because whatever it was, it didn't follow the script. And nothing will ever be the same again. She didn't come from the corridors of power. She came from protest signs, community halls, and late-night town meetings where people spoke with fire in their voices and pain in their eyes. Jasmine Crockett rose, not from party machines or donor lists, but from the streets, from classrooms where students demanded change, from neighborhoods where families fought evictions, from cities where police shootings became too frequent to ignore. Her voice was sharp, unfiltered. Her politics rooted in action, not ideology alone. And when she entered Congress, she didn't blend in. She stood out. A new kind of leader, one who answered not just to donors, but to districts long ignored by Washington. One who understood that representation wasn't about seat filling, it was about truth telling. And now, on national television, she was doing exactly that. A leader built on loyalty, not transparency. He built his rise on charisma, on spectacle, on a promise to dismantle what he called the swamp. But what he created instead was something else, entirely a fortress of loyalty. Guarded by fear, fueled by distrust. His brand was populism, but his governance was nationalism. He ruled not by consensus, but by allegiance. His base adored him not for policies, but for defiance. For standing up to the so-called elites. For rejecting the script. And yet, beneath the surface, cracks were forming. Some allies questioned his instincts. Others feared his recklessness. A few whispered behind closed doors, "We can't keep outrunning the truth." But no one dared speak it aloud. Until now. Whispers in the shadows weeks before the live confrontation. An anonymous whistleblower slipped classified documents into the hands of a small investigative team. They showed secret negotiations between high-ranking officials and foreign power stalks held outside official channels, away from prying eyes. Details were redacted, names blacked out. But the implications were clear. This wasn't diplomacy. It was backdoor dealings, and someone wanted the world to know. The story was buried quietly, efficiently. No headlines, no follow-ups. Just silence. But silence doesn't erase truth. It only delays its arrival. And someone had been listening, watching, waiting. Crockett follows the trail. She started asking questions, not in press conferences, not on social media, in quiet offices, in legal briefings, in closed-door hearings where most would have backed down. She requested records. She filed FOIA requests. She subpoenaed testimony. What she found was worse than she expected. Redacted reports, classified memos, closed-door meetings with unnamed attendees, and then something even more chilling. Evidence of surveillance programs targeting political dissenters, domestic monitoring justified under vague security directives. She saw the pattern, power protecting itself, truth being buried. And she knew this was bigger than any one administration. This was about democracy itself. She was warned. First subtly, "You're treading dangerous ground." Then more directly, "You don't want to be next." But she didn't stop. She couldn't. Because she knew if she didn't speak, no one else would. The silence breaker refuses to stay silent. She studied every angle, every document, every name. She mapped connections, traced timelines, cross-referenced sources. She prepared for backlash, for smear campaigns, for legal threats. And still, she moved forward. She waited for the right moment. Not a rally, not a speech, but a stage. A live audience, cameras rolling, no filters, no spin, just her. And when that moment arrived, she took it, without hesitation, without apology, because she knew what history would remember, that some moments demand courage, and others demand resistance. Behind closed doors, panic spreads like fire. White House advisors gather in dimly lit war rooms, their voices hushed but urgent. Phones buzz with encrypted messages. Laptops glow with redacted reports and flagged emails. "She's not bluffing," one aide says. "This isn't just noise. She has proof." Another leans forward, jaw clenched. "If she goes further, this thing blows wide open. We lose control." A third voice cuts through the tension. "We need to contain it. Now." But containment is slipping. The truth is no longer behind curtains. It's in the light. And it's moving fast. Journalists begin digging newsrooms across the country, ignite with purpose. At a major investigative outlet, a team pores over data leaked from offshore registries. Names appear linked to campaign donations, corporate shell companies, and foreign lobbying firms. These aren't random names, a reporter murmurs. They're connected to top-tier donors. People who don't make headlines but pull strings. They follow the money. And what they find is worse than they imagined. A web of influence stretching from boardrooms to backroom deals. A system built not on transparency, but on quiet power. One editor slams a folder onto the desk. This isn't corruption. This is structure. And now, the structure is cracking. World leaders watch closely in Brussels. Diplomats meet behind drawn blinds. This could change everything. One European official says, "If US leadership becomes unreliable, we have to reevaluate our alliances." In Moscow, state media broadcasts highlight the chaos, framing it as evidence of American decline. In Beijing, analysts watch carefully, calculating how instability in Washington might shift the balance of global power. Markets react instantly. Stocks dip, oil prices fluctuate, Investors hedge their bets. Because when a superpower shakes, the world feels it. And right now, the ground is trembling. Protests erupt across American college campuses. Students march with signs. Truth matters. Speech is not treason. Listen to the people. Crockett's face appears on posters, phone cases, protest banners. She's become more than a congresswoman. She's a symbol. But not everyone sees her that way. Conservative talk shows paint her as reckless, dangerous, even unpatriotic. She didn't expose anything, one host declares. She attacked national security for political gain. Memes flood social media, some mocking. Some violent death threats pile into her inbox. Yet she doesn't flinch. She walks into Capitol Hill each morning with her head high, because she knows something most don't. When you speak truth to power, power fights back, hard. Others start speaking up to knee. Other voice joins the chorus. A former intelligence officer steps forward, revealing classified directives tied to surveillance operations targeting domestic activists. We were told it was about national security, he says. But the targets weren't terrorists. They were dissenters. Next, a senator breaks ranks. Wentz, a loyal supporter of the administration. I believed in this movement, he tells reporters, but I can't ignore what's happening in the shadows. Whispers become statements. Statements become testimonies. And with each new voice, the wall around the powerful begins to crumble. Secret meetings, high stakes in a dimly lit conference room off Pennsylvania Avenue. Crockett meets with allies, lawyers, strategists, security experts. They lay out the risks. You could be subpoenaed, discredited, investigated. She listens, then she speaks. What happens if I stay silent? No one answers. Because they all know. Silence is complicity. And silence doesn't protect anyone anymore. She glances at a stack of documents on the table. Names, dates, evidence. She reaches for them. Let's prepare for what comes next. The president strikes first. He doesn't wait. He strikes first on live television. During a primetime address. There are forces working against this country, he declares. Hidden enemies, hiding behind the mask of democracy. This isn't about truth. It's about sabotage. They want to overthrow your government. His tone is sharp, accusatory. Traitors, he says, are hiding in plain sight. The phrase echoes across news cycles. Supporters rally behind him. Opponents brace for backlash. And somewhere, deep within the corridors of power, someone makes a call. Containment failed. Now we escalate. The podium gleams under studio lights. Cameras roll. Reporters murmur into microphones. The president stands tall, composed. His usual rhythm is their confidence in every word, control in every glance. Then she steps forward, uninvited, unannounced. Again, she doesn't ask permission. She just moves calmly, deliberately to the microphone beside him. A White House aide mouths something to a colleague. No. One interrupts. Because it's live. And because no one expected this. Not again. Crockett adjusts the mic. Mr. President, she begins. Voice even, unwavering. You've said repeatedly that this administration has no ties to foreign interference. She pauses. But we have documentation showing otherwise. Gasps ripple through the press room. The president stiffens. He tries to speak. She keeps going. We have directives, signed by your own hand. Meetings held without public record. And names you've publicly defended. Her eyes never leave the camera. Because she knows what's happening. This isn't just a confrontation. It's an exposure, and the world is watching. Truth held high. She lifts the document. One page, one piece of paper. But it carries the weight of a nation's secrets. She holds it high into the glare of the cameras. Names flash across screens. Globally, within seconds. Dates, locations, operations, evidence. Incontrovertible. A reporter drops their pen. Another fumbles with a recorder. Someone whispers, "She just went nuclear." The silence in the room is deafening. Then a cameraman zooms in, tight on her face.com. Focused, tense, and behind her, the president shifts. His jaw clenches. His fingers curl around the edge of the podium. He's not used to losing control. But right now, he's losing it. Badly, the president loses control. He snaps. "This is treason," he shouts. "This is dangerous rhetoric. You're playing with national security for political gain." His voice cracks not from weakness, but from fury. "I will not stand here while you sabotage our country." He turns to the reporters. "This is a witch hunt. A coordinated attack by radical elements who want to destroy everything we've built." He gestures at Crockett. Ask yourself, who put her up to this? The accusation lands like a grenade. Some journalists scribble notes. Others exchange glances. One mutters into his phone. He just made it personal. Crockett doesn't flinch. You keep talking about treason, she says. But where are the answers? Why were these meetings kept secret? Why were intelligence agencies bypassed? She leans in. Why did you authorize surveillance operations targeting American citizens? The room freezes. Even the cameras hesitate, as if they know. They've just captured history. Silence. Before the storm, he doesn't answer. Instead, he storms off stage. Shoes scuff against polished floors. Doors slam. The cameras follow. But the moment belongs to her, and the aftermath. Silence lingers in the press. Room then dash applause. From somewhere in the back, scattered, nervous, then boos, then murmurs. Then movement. Reporters bolt for phones. Producers shout orders into headsets. Outside, the streets erupt. Crowds gather outside the White House fence. Chants rise. Speak the truth. No more secrets. Hold them accountable. Protest signs bloom like wildfire. One reads, "The president is afraid of facts." Another, "Democracy doesn't need bodyguards." And as night falls over Washington, D.C., the city pulses with energy because today, something changed. Viral firestorm within minutes. Clips flood social media. Screenshots of the document go viral. Fact-checkers scramble conspiracy. Theorists spin theories. Journalists dissect every second. A trending clip replays the moment Crockett lifts the paper. Another shows the president walking away mid-speech. Commentators argue, pundits take sides. A conservative host declares, "This is an ambush, pure and simple." A progressive analyst counters, "No, this was accountability." Finally, meanwhile, global headlines ignite. U.S. president confronted over classified operations. Congressional showdown shakes American political order. In Moscow, state-run television replays the footage with glee. In Beijing, analysts debate whether this signals U.S. decline. In London, Parliament debates delaying a trade deal. And in Nairobi, Lagos, snow polo activists watch and share. Because this wasn't just about America, it was about power and truth. And how one woman stood up, and the world listened. The reckoning begins for the first time. The president looks vulnerable, not defeated, but shaken. Power doesn't shift overnight, but today, it wavered just enough. Enough for others to see, enough for others to act, enough for the people to remember. When leaders fear the truth, they've already lost control. Across Europe, emergency meetings begin before the footage even finishes playing. In Brussels, foreign ministers gathered behind closed doors. This isn't just an internal crisis. One says it's about reliability. If U.S. leadership can be shaken this easily, we must reassess. In Berlin, the chancellor issues a carefully worded statement. "We believe transparency is essential for democratic governance." But off the record, diplomats whisper concerns. If American credibility erodes, who steps in? Russia seizes the moment. State-run media broadcasts loop the footage of the president walking away mid-speech. Headlines read, "U.S. democracy on live television." In Beijing, analysts watch closely. One notes, "This proves that even superpowers have limits. That truth can fracture power from within." And in Nairobi, snow polo, Jakarta leaders take notes. Because what happens in Washington never stays there. Domestic fractures deepen back home. The political machine begins to splinter. Party leaders retreat into private offices. Phones pressed to their ears. Some resign quietly. Others double down. A conservative governor releases a video. This was not accountability. This was sabotage, and Crockett should be investigated. Meanwhile, in a major city, a mayor posts his own message. She didn't attack the country. She defended it. Protests swell. Counter-protests ignite. Tensions rise between neighbors, between co-workers, between families, because now everyone has a side, and no one is neutral. Social media becomes a battlefield by morning. #truth or treason trends globally. Celebrities weigh in. She stood up when others stayed silent. This is a witch hunt, dressed as journalism. Conspiracy theories multiply like wildfire. Screenshots are doctored. Quotes are taken out of context. Audio clips are manipulated. Fact-checkers scramble. They debunk some claims. They confirm others. But the damage is done. Public trust wavers, not just in politicians, but in institutions, in truth itself. Because in the age of information, truth is no longer enough. It has to survive the noise. Families divided at dinner tables. In small towns across America, dinner conversations turn heated. A father slams his fork down. You think she's brave. She endangered national security. His daughter looks him in the eye. No, he did, by hiding the truth. Elsewhere, a mother scrolls through news on her phone, while her teenage son watches Crockett's speech on repeat. Why don't you pay attention to what actually happened? He asks. She doesn't answer. Because she knows, and she's afraid. Because if this is the future, then the past no longer protects anyone. In a quiet suburb, a veteran films a short clip. He speaks directly to the camera. I served for this country. I didn't serve for lies. The video goes viral, not because it's dramatic, but because it's honest. Media shifts gears. Newsrooms pivot overnight. Investigative teams dig deeper. They uncover more names, more redacted reports, more secret meetings. Then a bombshell leaks. Internal memo reveals contingency plans for civil unrest scenarios. In the event of mass protests or congressional instability, one reporter reads the line aloud. They were preparing for war with their own people. The story spreads like wildfire. Editors debate whether to publish. They do. And the world reacts. Because this wasn't just about one confrontation. It was about how far power would go to protect itself. Global vigils and protests. Students organize vigils in Seoul, Cape Town, Mexico City. They hold candles. They chant in unison. Truth cannot be silenced. Journalists in authoritarian regimes share the footage secretly. One writes, if she could speak and survive, maybe we can too. In Moscow, a group gathers outside the US Embassy, not to protest, but to watch. To learn. To hope, because they've seen silence last decades, and now they see cracks. Even in iron walls, someone decides to speak in a darkened room. Somewhere overseas, someone replays the footage again. They watch Crockett lift the document. They hear the president walk away. They see the aftermath unfold. And then they close the laptop open. Another. Begin typing. Their hands tremble, but they keep going, because they know, if one voice can shake a nation, what can theirs do? The vote is cast. The final tally flashes. Across global screens, he survives, but barely. Supporters rally behind him one last time. Others quietly disappear. Some resign from public life. A few retreat into silence. But others, they begin to plot in private meetings, in encrypted messages, in hushed conversations over drinks. Plans are laid. Revenge won't come through power. Not anymore. It will come through influence, through back channels, through patience. Meanwhile, his approval rating plummets. For the first time, he walks into rooms where people don't rise, where they watch and wait, because history has already moved on. Crockett becomes a simple. She has offered book deals, speaking tours, talk show appearances. She declines them all. Instead, she returns to Congress, not for glory, not for fame, but for action. She introduces legislation protecting whistleblowers. She pushes for transparency reforms. She demands oversight committees be granted real authority, not just symbolic roles. Her speeches no longer carry defiance alone. They carry purpose, and with each word, she redefines what leadership means. Not control. Not spectacle. Accountability. Integrity. Courage. And slowly, steadily, her voice becomes more than a moment. It becomes a movement. A new coalition emerges across ideological lines. Something unprecedented begins to take shape. Not party unity, not compromise, but principle. Moderates and progressives find common ground, not in policy details, but in shared values. Transparency, democracy, justice. They form alliances, not based on party loyalty, but on conviction. One by one, voices emerge. Some were once loyalists, others, longtime critics. Now, they speak with one message. Power must serve the people. The media labels it a new coalition, but those inside it know better. This isn't politics. This is survival, of truth, of democracy, of trust. Global alliances recalibrate world. Leaders adjust their strategies. Trade agreements stall. Security pacts are renegotiated. Trust in American leadership once unshakable is now conditional. Nations that once followed Washington's lead now look elsewhere. Europeans meet without US representatives. African leaders consult among themselves before aligning with Western interests. Asia recalibrates its own balance of power. Old rivalries evolve. New partnerships form. Not out of hostility, but out of necessity. Because when a superpower falters even temporarily, the world doesn't stop. It adapts and moves forward. Media landscape evolves, newsrooms shift focus, fact-based journalism regains momentum. Investigative teams grow bolder. Editors greenlight stories once deemed too risky. Tech companies tighten algorithms. They crack down on disinformation. They label manipulated content. They ban accounts that spread lies disguised as news. Social media platforms introduce verification systems. Some call it censorship. Others call it clarity. But the truth, it finds its way. Not because institutions protect it, but because people demand it. And for the first time in years, journalists remember why they started this work. Not for clicks, not for ratings, but for truth. A new generation organized quiet corners of the internet. Young activists gather, not on mainstream platforms, not for viral moments, but for strategy. They plan, they organize, they build networks. Beyond borders, beyond party lines, beyond fear. They don't want reform. They want transformation. They study past movements. They learn from failures. They prepare. Because they understand something older generations. DIDN. Single quotes T. Change doesn't happen in one speech, one protest, one election. It happens when people decide collectively that the future belongs to them, and they take it. Not with violence, but with vision, with resilience, with truth. The footage flickers. Paris, 1968. Washington, 1963. Berlin, 1989. And Cairo, 2011. Each frame pulses with the same heartbeat. People rising, hands in the air, signs raised high, voices not just heard but felt. This is not history. This is a warning. Because democracy is not handed down like a relic. It is claimed. Again and again. In classrooms, courtrooms, streets. In whispered conversations and roaring speeches. In the courage of those who refuse to look away. And now, another moment joins that line. Another woman steps forward. Her name, Crockett. Chosen by legacy or wealth. Not born into power, but forged by it. By every silence she broke. Every truth she carried. Every wall she refused to accept. As final. She stood at the center of a storm not of her making, but one she would not flee. The world watched. Some cheered. Others feared what her presence meant. That the script could change. That the balance could tip. Because power shifts hands more often than we admit. One day, it's held by generals. The next, by bankers. Then by technocrats. Or populists. Or revolutionaries. Always moving. Always contested. But never given freely. It must be taken, claimed, protected, again and again. Crockett knew this. She didn't ask for permission. She demanded accountability. And in doing so, she forced the world to see what had always been true. Institutions are only as strong as the people willing to hold them accountable. That moment at the podium wasn't just about testimony. It was about transformation. Behind her, the cameras rolled. Ahead, the corridors of influence loomed. But in that space between, something shifted. Not laws, not borders. Something deeper. A belief that maybe the future doesn't belong to those with titles. Maybe it belongs to those with conviction. To those who speak when others stay silent. Who act when others hesitate. Because democracy is not a spectator sport. It is participation, risk, sacrifice, and sometimes it is standing alone before the world, knowing that the truth you speak may cost you everything. Crockett walked away from the podium. Not defeated, not triumphant, just resolved. The crowd murmured. Some rose, some sat frozen, some turned away. But the world did not look away, because the image remained, a woman walking through the echo of her own voice. Head held high, purpose unshaken. In that moment, power didn't belong to the man behind the desk. It belonged to the woman who dared to speak. And to all those watching, realizing perhaps for the first time, that their voices mattered too. Because this is how it starts. Not with revolutions, not with war, but with one person refusing to stay quiet. One act of defiance. One moment where the silence breaks, and the world changes, because someone finally speaks.